In terms of the annual leave, that's had a bit of a bad rap around this issue. Certainly Grant Robertson was saying, I would be extremely disappointed if employers were requiring their staff to take leave. Not sure whether that's in the real world really. Since then, it's, you know, we just need to break it down. So for those who are not paying their staff full pay, you can still give your staff the option to top up with annual leave. You will need to think about whether that suits your business, because I've heard quite a variety of views from businesses on this. Some say, well, if we have to terminate down the track, we'll have a big leave balance, and we all have this issue with leave balances anyway. So it's a good idea to reduce your leave balance down now while we can. Others are saying, well, I can't actually afford it at the moment. There is a view that where people have annual leave that they're entitled to, you should be in a position to pay that out at any time, but we know that we're going into some difficult times. So, and some employers are saying, no, I would rather not pay out annual leave. So if you are able to do that, then you could give them the option that they could ask to do that. Remember that you can only pay out 1 week of annual leave a year. So just being careful around paying cash for annual leave. If you have tried to reach agreement with staff and you can't reach agreement, remember that you can give 14 days notice to take annual leave. So that obviously is not going to work in the immediate, but if you can see that it would be advantageous to you for your staff to take that, then that's something that you could look at doing. So, you know, there are quite a few options around annual leave. So what they didn't want was people, you know, sort of requiring people to use up their leave and not doing the wage subsidy and things like that, I think. Another person is asking, interested in reducing staff hours and potential redundancy, and that there's not enough work for one of their staff members, because, in terms of the type of work that's coming in. So yeah, so as I said before about the reduction in staff hours, yes, you can do that, and you need to follow a process. That is a really common thing that I am seeing. So I'm seeing a lot of employers reducing to 80%. Some are only paying wage subsidy, and I'd have to say that would be in the case where there's no work going on at all. You wouldn't get away with paying the wage subsidy if they should have earned wages or salary more than that and they are still working. So, you know, it's very common at the moment that employers are reducing hours and therefore pay. Some companies have got some flack in the paper about that, but what is being described in the news is what is happening in many workplaces. So if you're thinking about that, sometimes it's difficult if you're working in your own, business and you're not sure what other people are doing. But it is common. And with this question that's been sent through, look, that you'd need to work out whether that's something that could be addressed by a temporary reduction in hours or pay, and see how you go, and whether it's likely that that type of work is going to increase or come back on again after or soon after the lockdown. If it's not, then you would be justified in making them redundant. But as I said before, you need to justify why you need to go that further step, if that makes sense. Others have asked about what happens at the end of the lockdown work. Will work be the same? Will we have a staged return to our work? So it's similar. And I agree that you need to be looking at that. So when we've gone through processes with, when we've been going through the processes, we've been alluding to the fact that it might not be everyone back all on at once, and that you might need to think about having a staged return for staff Now I see people asking questions, and I knew this was going to happen because Jacinda was having a press conference at the same time as I was doing this, and and it's on the what's happening with essential workers who need to stay home, because what the government did was they had the separate subsidy when people were sick with COVID or in self-isolation, and because we then had the lockdown, they rolled it into the wage subsidy the other day. But what it didn't cover was situations where you're an essential worker and you have to self-isolate for 14 days. So it sounds as if that is going to be the same as the wage subsidy amount from messages that I was asked to have sent through to me, but just so you know, but I'm not able to go into detail because it's current and up to date, because it's coming through at the same time as I'm doing this. Public holidays is another curly one that we need to be prepared for heading into Easter. So this person's asked about Good Friday. They've got staff who normally work on a Friday, and what do we do? So yes, it will still be a public holiday, and you should treat, if they would normally work on a Friday, treat them as if it is an ordinary day that they would normally work, and therefore pay them at their normal rate if they are not working, and time and a half if they are. If you have made some changes to your pay structure through consultation, so if you've dropped them to 80%, for example, then it would be paid at that new rate if you've been through that process. So that's how you deal with that one. Privacy requirements. So yes, the Ministry of Social Development has stated that you need to have permission from your staff to put their name in the wage subsidy, and that you have discussed it with the employees, and that those names have, those people have consented in writing to you providing that information. The Privacy Commissioner has come out this week and said that look, if you're okay to go, because of it's being a civil defence emergency, there's a code that covers it, which means that you can go ahead and make that application, and then as long as you tell your staff at some point, sort of catch up with that, that you would be meeting those requirements. Kind of interesting in that it's actually a requirement of the declaration from the Ministry of Social Development to say that, but the consequence of that would be someone would complain to the Privacy Commissioner. So the fact that the Privacy Commissioner has said that is quite helpful. So practically just make sure that you're letting them know, and if you're consulting with them about change of hours and things like that anyway, then that would be a good time to be addressing that point. A few more questions coming through. One said a company is holding on to the government subsidy and paying weekly, and thought they had to pay it as a lump sum. No, so the company gets paid it as a lump sum, but only has to pay it out weekly or whatever. So most companies are paying it out as in the normal pay run. So there's no obligation to pass it on to staff as a lump sum. Yes, one person has said about the Jacinda's announcement, thank you, is that what I said? May need to take leave. It's the same as the wage subsidy applying from Monday. Thank you there from Tasha. Contracts allow salary review each April. Can this be used to lower salaries? You would need to go through a consultation process. So the question is, could the standard salary review be used to put the salaries down? You couldn't just drop them. You would still need to go through a consultation process and justify and spell out the reasons why that would be. So whilst that might trigger the time frame for dealing with it, it would need to be the type of process that I've talked about. Question about how to deal with staff who refuse the changes. So this is the big issue. So ideally you would get agreement in writing from these people. Where you have a pandemic clause, it's much easier because you can say, well, the alternative is that we don't have you here and we don't pay you at all in the situation where you don't have any work. Where you don't, and I mean, in all cases, we're going through consultation, and consultation doesn't mean agreement necessarily. You have to take into account their views. There's a little bit of a tension there between, well, if someone's kicking up, it's good to see if you can find a way through it. But what I'm finding is most employers are needing to take a one-size-fits-all for this because they can't make exceptions for everyone, especially when they've got a high number of staff. So if it's a matter of seeing if you can address the issue. I think what I'm observing across the board is that everyone in the country is feeling pain from an income point of view. So every business is feeling pain, and it's filtering right through to every worker as well. And we are seeing a lot of workers who understandably are really concerned that their pay will be going down. On the other hand, there's quite a big group of them who are really appreciative to still have a job, and that's really almost the message that has to go out when you see what's happening in so many different businesses. So it is one of these situations that's truly been felt right across the board. And I know there's a lot of business owners who are getting quite frustrated because of the massive stresses that they're having to go through, all the issues that they're having to resolve, only one of which is staff, but staff is a big part of the problem, isn't it? And it's a big part of your monthly bill or outgoings. And then the staff are only worried about their own world. Totally get that as well. And it's a matter of trying to work your way through it if you can. But the key thing being that if you go through consultation in a proper process, then you've got the ability to push these changes rather than mucking around on it. So that's why I really, really do recommend following the process. The advice, someone's asking, the advice is that the subsidy must be passed to staff, assuming that's not literal. We're still paying our staff, albeit at 80%. So assume the subsidy is retained by the company to help fund the payroll then, rather than passing on 580 to each employee. Yes, so it is the case that the employer receives that into their bank account and then uses that to pay the payroll. So you are passing it on in the sense that as long as you are paying the wage subsidy amount or more, then you are complying. And then there's another question which is probably not quite employment based, but completed March invoicing due in April, and businesses are holding on to their cash, making it tricky to pay and get people paid. Look, that is what we're seeing as well. And so just being really communicative with people who owe you money, because the chain goes on and on. No one is wanting to pay out. They're all holding on to their money. And so it's basically people trying to hold on to their cash so that they've got it for themselves in a really uncertain situation. So it is something to keep on to. Seeing if there's some more, might have time for one more. Someone's just asked about Good Friday, which I think I've probably addressed before. So it's if it's Good Friday, you pay pay for that day. So it might be, if they work a full week, normally it'll be 5 days, and if they're on 80%, you'd pay 5 days at 80% if they don't work that day. So that so hopefully that helps. So we've hit our half hour. Hopefully the answers to those questions have helped you, and just some of our general observations. If you've got a specific question in relation to your business, then feel free to get in touch. I'm on email and mobile, which you can find on the website, but it's the usual amanda.douglas@wynnwilliams.co.nz. And our team has been dealing with so many of these issues, and sometimes it's a matter of just talking through the issues and working out a way through. It's not always immediately obvious, and some are quite tricky. We've found also where people have got lots of part-time workers and people on different arrangements. We've had to do different arrangements for sort of different groups of people to try and achieve the same fairness overall. So getting in touch, making a time. If you need to have a more full discussion, we're more than happy to go through it with you so that you can work through these issues, because they're not easy, but we do fall back on the general concepts of employment law, which there are some basic fundamental principles, and if we apply those to this new environment, then we can keep you all safe, because as we know, any person can raise a personal grievance, and sometimes they're without merit. We hope that we don't end up with a whole heap out of this, but it pays to make sure that you do things right. So thank you all for attending, and you know where we are, and we will be in touch, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions or issues. So thanks everyone, we'll see you next time.